The rain fell in relentless sheets over the bustling streets, turning the sidewalks into slick rivers of water. Streetlights flickered in the mist, illuminating the cracked pavement in dim golden glows. Inside the warm glow of the Harborview Diner, the faint scent of freshly brewed coffee mixed with buttered toast, cutting through the damp chill outside, Marissa Lane, a young bartender in her mid-20s, leaned wearily against the counter. Her apron damp from hours of double shifts. Her dark brown hair clung to her forehead, and her shoes squished with each tired step. Despite the exhaustion etched across her face, there was a spark in her eyes, a spark of warmth, resilience, and kindness that refused to be dimmed by life's relentless challenges. She'd grown up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce and hard work often went unnoticed. Yet she carried herself with quiet pride. As she wiped down the counter for the 100th time that evening, something caught her eye outside the rain-streaked windows. A small figure, hunched in a battered wheelchair, struggled against the wind and rain. His coat was tattered, the thin fabric offering little protection from the chill, and his tiny hands clutched a frayed blanket, trembling in the cold. Marissa's chest tightened. She'd seen children in difficult situations before, but something about this boy made her pause. He wasn't just cold or wet. He was alone, helpless, vulnerable. Her heart ached as she watched him shiver, his eyes scanning the empty street with a mix of hope and uncertainty. "Hey. Hey, sweetie," she called softly, pushing open the heavy diner door. The warmth inside hit her instantly, but her attention was fixed on him. She crouched beside the wheelchair, letting the wind and rain whip around them. "What are you doing out here all alone?" The boy flinched at first, then slowly lifted his gaze. His eyes were a piercing shade of blue, wide and uncertain, and his voice trembled as he whispered, I'm waiting for my dad." Marissa glanced down the street. Empty. Only the dim flicker of a pawn shop's neon sign across the road illuminated the rain-slicked asphalt. "Where is he?" She pressed gently, concern creeping into her voice. The boy shrugged, pulling the blanket tighter around him. Marissa exhaled, biting her lip. Too many times she'd seen kids left waiting for someone who wasn't coming. "Well, you can't stay out here in this mess," she said, kneeling beside him and offering a warm smile. "Come inside with me. It's warm, and I've got something special for you." The boy hesitated, uncertainty flickering across his face. Slowly, he nodded. Marissa gently took hold of the wheelchair's handles and guided him through the diner door. Immediately, the scent of buttered toast, sizzling bacon, and strong coffee wrapped around them like a comforting blanket. She led him to a booth near the radiator, draping a fresh towel over his shoulders before crouching to meet his eyes. "I'm Marissa," she said softly, flashing another smile. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Ethan," he murmured, fingers curling around the blanket. "Ethan," she repeated, nodding approvingly. "That's a strong name. You hungry?" Ethan hesitated, then nodded slightly. Without waiting, Marissa moved toward the kitchen, her movements practiced and efficient. Within minutes, she returned with a steaming plate, grilled cheese golden and crisp, paired with a bowl of tomato soup. This was her comfort food of choice, the kind her grandmother had made on long, lonely nights. She tucked a napkin into Ethan's lap. "This one's on me," she said gently. Ethan's eyes widened as he took his first bite, the cheese stretching in gooey strings. This is the best thing I've ever had," he whispered, a hint of wonder in his voice. Marissa chuckled softly, watching as he devoured the sandwich. "Good food makes everything better," she said lightly, but inside, she felt the familiar ache, the one that came when she saw someone so young, so small, already carrying the weight of the world. What she didn't know was that across the street, hidden in the shadows, a sleek black SUV sat idling. Its tinted windows reflected the neon glow of the diner. Inside, a man in a tailored suit observed quietly. Raymond Vaughn, 46, was a billionaire whose empire ran on control, precision, and ruthless efficiency. Emotions in his world were liabilities. Weaknesses were opportunities for loss. Yet, as he watched the young bartender feed his son with such genuine care, something stirred. A flicker of recognition that this act of kindness mattered more than any spreadsheet or investment report. Ethan laughed for the first time that evening, swinging his legs under the table. Marissa wiped away the small traces of soup from his chin, shaking her head. "Messy eater, huh?" she teased. Raymond's jaw tightened as he studied the scene, mind racing. He had been delayed by an urgent investor call in Tokyo and had instructed Ethan to wait outside the diner for just a few minutes. He had expected his son to be alone, uncomfortable, and perhaps impatient. He had not expected this, the way this young woman treated him like he mattered. He reached for his phone, dialing his assistant. "Nora," he said, voice clipped. "Get down to the diner. I want to know everything about the woman who just fed my son. No suits, no heels. Be there in 20 minutes. Inside the diner, Marissa poured Ethan a glass of milk. He sniffed the drink, the tension of the evening slowly melting away. For a few precious moments, the world outside, the rain, the darkness, the cold, didn't exist. Here there was warmth, comfort, and a small taste of security. The door swung open suddenly, letting in a gust of cold wind. A woman in jeans and a hoodie stepped inside, her presence commanding in subtle ways. Blonde hair tucked beneath a faded cap, eyes sharp, assessing. Marissa immediately sensed that she was not here for a simple cup of coffee. "Time to go, champ," the woman said softly, crouching beside Ethan. Ethan frowned, looking at Marissa. "But I haven't finished my milk." The woman tilted her head, a practiced smile playing on her lips. "You can take it with you." "Your ride's waiting," Marissa's instincts flared. She had seen too many children hurried away, erased from situations where they deserved protection. But she also knew caution. She slid a chocolate chip cookie into Ethan's hand for the road. "For you," she said softly. "One last treat before you go." Ethan's small fingers curled around the cookie. For the first time that night, he smiled at Marissa. "Thanks." "You're the best," Marissa forced a smile, but inside unease gnawed at her. The woman wheeled Ethan toward the door. Across the street, Raymond's SUV's headlights flashed. The moment his son was safely secured inside, Raymond stepped out, his presence imposing against the neon glow of the diner. He didn't speak immediately, only watched Marissa. Something about the way she had acted, the effortless kindness, the courage to care without knowing, made her different. Dangerous even, in a world built on transactional relationships and power. As the SUV disappeared into the rain-soaked night, Marissa trudged home, sneakers soaked, a chill settling deep into her bones. The memory of Ethan's grin stayed with her, warm and persistent. She didn't know it yet, but her life had changed forever. Across the street, a billionaire had seen the power of a small, selfless act, and it was a debt he intended to repay. The rain had finally slowed to a drizzle, leaving puddles shimmering like liquid mirrors along the slick streets. Yet the memory of what had unfolded at the diner that night lingered in Raymond Vaughan's mind, sharp and insistent. He leaned back in the leather seat of his sleek SUV, gray eyes narrowed, watching as the last streaks of neon light from the diner reflected in the puddles. He had seen many acts of kindness in his life. Philanthropic gestures, charitable donations, well-planned PR campaigns, but none had ever struck him the way Marissa Lane's simple act had. Feeding his son, protecting him, showing care without expectation, something so ordinary, yet so profoundly rare. Raymond's hand rested on the steering wheel, tight, knuckles white. He had built an empire from nothing, a vast network of tech companies and investments that spanned the globe. His life was precision itself, calculated, controlled, efficient. Weakness was a liability, emotion a distraction, and yet, tonight, something had pierced the armor he'd spent decades constructing. Ethan, his son, had been laughing, truly laughing, for the first time in months. The sparkle in his blue eyes, the way his tiny fingers had wrapped around the cookie Marissa had given him. Raymond had felt a pang he couldn't name. Guilt, gratitude, perhaps a mixture of both. One thing was clear. That young bartender had done more for his son in 15 minutes than he had managed in years. He pulled out his phone, dialing a number he knew by instinct. The line connected immediately. "Nora," he said, voice clipped, controlled, almost cold. "Yes, sir," came the familiar smooth reply. "Get down to Lexington Diner. Now, no suits. No heels, just observe. I want a full report. Everything. I need to know who she is, what she's done, and how she came into my son's life." There was a brief pause. "Right away, sir," Nora answered, her tone polite, but with a faint undertone of curiosity. Something Raymond had learned to detect in employees who were intelligent, alert, capable of reading between the lines. He ended the call and let out a low breath, staring out at the city that shimmered like a field of stars beneath the rainy night sky. He had no intention of allowing chaos to disrupt his carefully curated life. But this woman, Marissa Lane, had introduced a variable he had not accounted for. Across the street, the diner's warm light had dimmed. Marissa, exhausted but satisfied, wiped down the counter one last time before locking the doors. Her fingers were pruned from hours of standing in hot water, her apron clinging damply to her skin. Yet her heart felt light. She had helped a child, and for a few moments the world seemed right. She didn't know that her every gesture had been observed, catalogued, analyzed by one of the most powerful men in the city. Nor did she suspect that the simple act of kindness she had offered freely might soon dictate the course of her life in ways she could never imagine. Walking home through puddle-streaked streets, Marissa kept Ethan's smile in her mind. It was a smile that cut through the monotony of her life, a reminder that hope still existed. She pulled her coat tighter around her, shivering in the chill that seeped into her bones. Her small apartment on West Fayette Street awaited, the heater sputtering weakly, the peeling paint reminding her daily of how far she still had to go. Inside the Bentley, Raymond's mind was a storm of conflicting thoughts. He had no practice in handling emotions, particularly ones triggered by the innocence and courage of a stranger. Normally he dealt in data, numbers, reports, graphs, metrics. But tonight the metric was something else entirely. A metric he couldn't quantify, human kindness. He leaned forward, pressing his palms into his forehead. "She didn't even know it was him," he muttered, voice barely audible over the soft hum of the engine. She helped him anyway, the thought gnawed at him. In his world, every action had a cost, a return on investment. Every act of generosity had strings attached, invisible but always there. But not this. Marissa had acted without calculation, without thought of reward or recognition. Pure intention. He made a decision. "I need to know everything about her," he said aloud, more to himself than to anyone else. "Where she lives, her work history, her habits. Everything! And I'll decide from there." The next morning, Marissa awoke to the sound of rain still tapping against her window. Her small apartment smelled faintly of stale coffee, and the sound of her neighbor's TV leaked through the thin walls. She stretched, shaking the sleep from her muscles, then glanced at the small envelope that had arrived in her mailbox overnight. She froze. There was no return address. The envelope was thick, expensive paper, and heavy in her hands. Her heart pounded as she tore it open. Inside, neatly folded, was a single piece of paper and a card embossed with the words, "Holt Dynamics. Executive Opportunity." Her fingers trembled as she read the words. 6-figure salary, benefits, direct mentorship under Raymond Vaughn, responsibility over high-level negotiations, public relations, and corporate strategy. She blinked, unsure she had read it correctly. "No, this can't be real," she whispered to herself. The thought of working for a billionaire had always seemed like something out of a dream, or worse, a nightmare. People like Raymond Vaughn didn't notice bartenders in rundown diners. They didn't reward kindness, and yet, here it was, tangible, undeniable. Meanwhile, Raymond observed from his office, reviewing footage from the previous night. Marissa's interactions with Ethan were recorded, each gesture, each smile, each small act of care. She didn't know she was being watched, yet her authenticity was unmistakable. Her actions had defied the rigid logic of his world, and he found himself respecting her in a way he hadn't respected anyone in years. He called Nora, his assistant. "Bring her in," he said simply. "I want to meet her today. Let's see if she's as remarkable as last night." "Yes, sir," Nora replied, though she sounded surprised. "Are you sure? I mean, she's just a bartender." Raymond's gray eyes flickered with intensity. "She's not just anything. She's human, and she's done what most in my world cannot. She's acted with genuine care, without strategy. That makes her dangerous, in a good way. By the afternoon, Marissa found herself standing outside Holt Dynamics' gleaming tower for the first time. She had never seen such glass, such steel, such bright fluorescent light that reflected on polished marble floors like a river of stars. Her thrifted heels clicked on the marble as she stepped inside, nerves coiling tightly in her stomach. Every eye followed her as she walked, subtle glances of evaluation flicking across the crowd. Executives paused mid-conversation, assistants whispered. Everyone sensed she did not belong, yet she held her head high, shoulders squared, refusing to shrink. Nora met her at the reception desk. Blonde, poised, unreadable, she extended a hand. "Marissa Lane?" Marissa shook it cautiously. "That's me. You'll be meeting Mr. Vaughn in his office." "He's expecting you," Nora said, her tone neutral, though a flicker of curiosity flashed in her eyes. Marissa's pulse quickened. Meeting a billionaire? One who had already observed her interactions with his child. It was terrifying, thrilling, and surreal. She followed Nora to the elevator, hands gripping the railing, heart pounding. Raymond's office was on the top floor, a sweeping view of the city stretching for miles. When Marissa entered, he didn't rise. He didn't offer a smile. Instead, he gestured toward the chair across from him. "Sit," he said, voice controlled, precise, cold. Marissa complied, though her eyes flicked across the room, taking in every detail. The space screamed power, floor-to-ceiling windows, a desk that looked more like an art installation than furniture, shelves lined with awards, plaques, and meticulously organized binders. Raymond studied her silently. Finally he spoke, his tone deliberate. "You fed my son last night. You didn't know who he was. You didn't ask for anything in return. That makes you rare." Marissa swallowed, unsure how to respond. The weight of his gaze made her heart race. I just did what anyone would do," she murmured. "No," he said firmly. "Most people wouldn't. That's why you're here. That's why I'm offering you an opportunity few would even dream of. Not charity, opportunity, 6 figures, responsibility, direct mentorship. You've seen the power of influence. Now you'll wield it." Her mind whirled. Pride warred with practicality. Fear warred with hope. Could she step into a world so alien, so unforgiving, yet so full of potential? And just as she was about to respond, a subtle knock echoed through the office door. Nora appeared briefly, tablet in hand. "Everything's ready, sir," she said, her eyes flicking briefly at Marissa, a silent warning in the way she looked. Raymond's gray eyes locked on Marissa's once more. "The choice is yours," he said softly, yet with the weight of a man who was used to having the final word. "Decide wisely. Your life, your destiny, is about to change." Marissa's pulse thundered in her ears. She glanced at the envelope in her hands, the card that seemed heavier than it should be. Outside, the city sparkled, oblivious to the quiet storm of fate unfolding in that office. And in that moment, she understood. This was more than a job offer. It was a crossroads. One choice, one step, could change everything. Marissa Lane sat frozen in Raymond Vaughn's expansive office, the city sprawling behind her like a glittering tapestry of possibility. The envelope on the desk seemed to pulse with energy, as if it contained not just paper, but a pathway to a completely different life. Her fingers brushed the card, heavy with the weight of expectation, and she felt a whirlwind of conflicting emotions crash over her. Fear, excitement, disbelief, and a strange, unnameable thrill. Her life up until now had been a cycle of survival. Long hours behind a bar counter in a cramped, overworked diner, double shifts that left her aching and exhausted, rent that consumed nearly every paycheck, bills that piled up despite her careful planning, dreams that felt distant, unattainable, like stars she could see but never touch. Yet here she was, being offered not just a job, but a ticket into a world she had only glimpsed from a distance, a world of power, influence, and unimaginable resources. Raymond's gray eyes never wavered from her face. There was no smile, no charm, no subtle attempt to manipulate. Just the sharp, unwavering scrutiny of a man accustomed to knowing exactly what people were capable of. "Do you understand the gravity of what I'm offering?" he asked, his voice low, precise, carrying the weight of someone who rarely made mistakes. Marissa took a deep breath. Yes, sir, she replied cautiously. Her voice trembled slightly, not out of fear, but because the reality of the opportunity was sinking in. But why me? Why not someone with experience, someone who's worked in corporate strategy for years? Raymond leaned back, steepling his fingers. Because experience doesn't guarantee insight. Intelligence doesn't guarantee empathy. You acted with both last night. You didn't know my son. You didn't know me. Yet you treated him with respect, kindness, and patience. That is rare. And in my world, rare is valuable. The logic was undeniable. And yet her pride bristled. Marissa had spent years fighting to survive on her own terms. She had learned that offers like this often came with strings, subtle manipulations designed to trap, control, or exploit. How could she be sure this was different? Before she could respond, Raymond continued, as if reading her hesitation. This is not charity, Marissa. It's opportunity. 6 figures, benefits, mentorship, and a direct path to shaping outcomes that affect thousands. You'll work directly with me. You'll handle negotiations, public relations, and strategic initiatives. You'll learn the inner workings of an empire. And in return, I expect you to bring the same integrity, dedication, and insight you showed last night. Marissa's mind raced. 6 figures, stability, influence. The ability to make a real difference. And yet, there was the shadow of doubt. The fear that stepping into this world could consume her, change her, make her into someone she might not recognize. She started, then faltered, her gaze dropping to the envelope. The paper seemed to glow with possibility. I need time to think, she finally said. Raymond inclined his head. You have until tomorrow morning. After that, the opportunity is no longer yours. Think carefully, Marissa, not just about what this could give you, but what it could demand of you. She left the office with a whirlwind of thoughts spinning in her head. The elevator ride down felt surreal, each floor a reminder of the distance between her current life and the one being offered. Outside, the city buzzed with ordinary activity, people rushing to work, cars honking, vendors setting up for the day. It was the same city she had always known, yet now it felt smaller, constrained, limited. The world Raymond Vaughn had opened up was vast, luminous, and frighteningly real. Back in her apartment, Marissa sat on the edge of her bed, the envelope on her lap. Ethan's smile from last night flashed in her mind. His laughter, unburdened and genuine, reminded her why she had acted without hesitation. It had been instinctual, a simple choice to help a child in need. But now, her decision carried consequences far beyond anything she had anticipated. Her phone buzzed. A message from her best friend Jenna. Hey, how's the barista turned CEO in training? Marissa chuckled softly despite herself, typing a reply, then putting the phone down. Humor was fleeting in her life, but it helped ground her. She thought about her family, her younger brother, who relied on her for guidance and support. Her mother, working 2 jobs, still struggling to pay bills. If she accepted this opportunity, it could change not just her life, but theirs as well. The weight of responsibility pressed on her chest. Could she step into a world so foreign and expect to survive unscathed? At the same time, she knew the alternative. Staying in the diner, working long hours for barely enough to scrape by, was familiar but suffocating. It offered stability in one sense, but it was a stability built on exhaustion and limitation. This opportunity, terrifying as it was, offered growth, influence, and the chance to make a real impact. The night stretched long. She barely slept. Visions of boardrooms, neon lights, and Ethan's joyful eyes blending into dreams and wakefulness. Every scenario she imagined seemed to oscillate between promise and peril. Morning came with a surge of decision-making energy. Marissa dressed carefully, choosing attire that reflected professionalism, yet preserved her identity. Thrifted blazer, simple heels, and a quiet confidence. She carried the envelope like a talisman, a reminder of what was at stake. Raymond's office awaited. He did not greet her warmly, he never did, but there was an unspoken acknowledgement in his gaze as she entered. Decision? He asked, gray eyes locked onto hers. She straightened, taking a deep breath. I accept, she said, her voice steady. Her decision made not out of desperation, but determination. I'll take the opportunity. I want to learn. I want to make a difference. And I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust. A subtle nod from Raymond. Good. Then let's begin. Nora stepped in, ready to brief Marissa on company protocols and expectations. Marissa absorbed every word, every detail, every subtle nuance of corporate dynamics, knowing that her every move would be scrutinized. The stakes were high. Failure could not only jeopardize her position, but also her reputation, her sense of self, and the fragile trust she had built. The first weeks were a trial by fire. Meetings that lasted hours, corporate politics, backstabbing colleagues, and high-stakes negotiations tested Marissa's patience, resilience, and ingenuity. She navigated these challenges with the same empathy and insight that had caught Raymond's attention. She learned to anticipate moves, read people, and balance power with principle. But the real turning point came during a critical negotiation with a multinational conglomerate seeking to outsource thousands of jobs overseas. Marissa's analysis, built on market trends, human impact, and strategic forecasting, highlighted the long-term costs and risks of the decision. Her presentation was meticulous, persuasive, and undeniable. The boardroom was tense. Executives shifted uncomfortably as Marissa outlined the potential consequences of their plan: loss of talent, negative publicity, and long-term financial impact. When she finished, the room fell silent. Then, slowly, heads nodded. Her arguments had swayed even the most skeptical. Raymond watched from the side, his expression inscrutable, yet the faintest hint of approval softened his sharp features. Marissa had proven herself, not through privilege, not through pedigree, but through insight, courage, and integrity. By the end of the week, Marissa realized something profound. This opportunity was not just about wealth, influence, or power. It was about the ability to create real change, to protect those who could not protect themselves, and to use her voice and skills to impact countless lives. And through it all, she never forgot Ethan. His laughter, his vulnerability, and the simple trust he had placed in her reminded her why she had accepted this challenge. Kindness had opened a door. Courage had allowed her to step through it. And now, responsibility, and the chance to shape a legacy, lay firmly in her hands. Marissa Lane had barely settled into her new role at Vaughn Dynamics when the storm hit. She had spent weeks learning the inner workings of the company, building her knowledge, understanding the subtle dynamics between executives, and earning a tentative respect from her colleagues. Yet she quickly realized that knowledge alone would not be enough to survive in a world fueled by power, greed, and hidden agendas. The first hint of trouble arrived in the form of a terse email marked urgent from the executive assistant, Nora Winters. Its contents were simple, yet alarming. Confidential financial data has been leaked. Your name is on the forwarding chain. Board meeting scheduled immediately. Marissa felt the color drain from her face. The sensation was familiar, the same dread she had felt countless times when the world seemed set against her. Only now the stakes were higher, far higher. This was not just her reputation at risk, but her career, her credibility, and the fragile trust she had built with Raymond Vaughn. She raced through the glass corridors of Vaughn Dynamics, the city outside shimmering through the towering windows. The air smelled faintly of polished marble and cold metal, a sterile reminder of the world she had stepped into. Every step echoed ominously. Like a countdown to confrontation, Raymond's office was colder than usual. He was seated behind his sleek, polished desk, hands steepled, gray eyes piercing into hers as she entered. "Marissa," he said, voice calm but carrying the weight of authority, "explain why my name has not been cleared in this matter, and why the board is already considering disciplinary action." Marissa inhaled deeply. "Sir, I had nothing to do with the leak. I've been careful, precise, and I would never compromise the company intentionally. Someone is framing me. I don't know who, but I can track the source." Her voice was steady, but inside, adrenaline and fear surged through her veins. Raymond's eyes remained fixed on her, unreadable, yet assessing. "Do you understand the implications? Even the appearance of wrongdoing can destroy a career here, Marissa. One mistake or one setup can end everything you've worked for." "Yes, sir," she said firmly. "I understand." Nora Winters entered shortly after, her tablet in hand. "I've begun tracing the source," she said, her tone professional but tight. The leak was routed through an external server. Someone covered their tracks well, but not well enough. "I believe we can identify the culprit with additional cross-referencing." Marissa leaned forward, determination overtaking fear. "Then let's do it. Whoever did this, they underestimated me. I won't let them succeed." The hours that followed were grueling. Marissa and Nora sifted through mountains of data, examining server logs, timestamps, and email chains. Every detail mattered. Every anomaly could point to the saboteur. Marissa quickly realized that corporate espionage was less about hacking skills and more about psychological strategy, anticipating mistakes, exploiting weaknesses, and manipulating perception. As the night deepened, fatigue set in, but Marissa refused to relent. The image of Ethan, the boy she had fed that first night, flashed in her mind. His trust had been absolute, his faith in her instinctive kindness unwavering. How could she betray that same trust now by failing to act? She drew strength from that memory, using it to fuel her concentration and resilience. Finally, a breakthrough. A series of emails traced to Eric Calloway, a senior executive with a reputation for cunning and subtle sabotage. The evidence was painstakingly pieced together. Bank transfers, forwarding chains, and digital footprints, all pointing unmistakably to him. Marissa and Nora presented the findings to Raymond, who listened without expression, but whose eyes hinted at satisfaction. "Full legal action," Raymond said finally, his voice precise and unwavering. "Effective immediately. No one here is above accountability, Marissa. You understand that?" "I do, sir," Marissa replied, relief and vindication flooding her at once. She had survived her first storm, and in doing so, had proven her capabilities not just to Raymond, but to the entire company. However, the victory was bittersweet. While Eric Calloway faced termination and legal consequences, Marissa realized the true challenge of Vaughn Dynamics was not just individual adversaries, but the culture itself, a culture of manipulation, hidden agendas, and silent competition. She had stepped into a world where alliances were fluid, trust was scarce, and appearances often concealed deeper truths. Meetings became battlegrounds. Every suggestion she made was scrutinized, every recommendation questioned. Even minor decisions carried enormous weight, and missteps could be fatal to her career. Yet Marissa adapted. She learned to anticipate challenges, navigate delicate social dynamics, and wield her knowledge strategically. Her empathy, insight, and integrity, qualities that had once seemed ordinary, became her strongest weapons. The board began to notice. Executives who had once dismissed her now observed her with cautious respect. Raymond, ever the enigma, remained aloof but subtly supportive. He offered guidance only when necessary, letting Marissa develop her own strategies, test her instincts, and grow into her role. Parallel to her corporate battles, Marissa never lost sight of why she had accepted the role in the first place. She maintained contact with Ethan and his family, visiting when possible, supporting his development, and ensuring that the impact of her first act of kindness extended beyond the corporate walls. She understood now that true influence was measured not by power or wealth alone, but by the ability to create positive change in the lives of others. Ethan's progress mirrored her own. From a timid, uncertain boy reliant on the kindness of strangers, he began to flourish, his confidence growing under the careful guidance and support she provided. Their bond, forged in a diner one rainy night, became a source of mutual strength. Every smile, every laugh, every small achievement reinforced Marissa's determination to persevere in a world that often seemed stacked against her. By the end of the month, Marissa had not only survived her first major corporate storm, but had also established herself as a formidable presence in Vaughn Dynamics. Her analytical skills, ethical grounding, and strategic acumen became widely recognized. She had faced deception, sabotage, and high-stakes pressure, and emerged stronger, more confident, and more capable. Yet she knew the journey was far from over. The corporate world was a living, breathing ecosystem of challenges, each day bringing new tests of skill, judgment, and morality. Marissa understood that her success depended not only on intelligence or resilience, but on her ability to remain true to her principles while navigating an environment designed to test them at every turn. As she left the office that evening, the city lights reflecting off the glass towers, Marissa felt a quiet sense of pride and anticipation. She had faced the storm and emerged victorious, but the horizon was vast, and greater challenges lay ahead. She knew now that her journey was not just about surviving in the world of the wealthy and powerful. It was about changing it. One decision, one action, one act of integrity at a time. And in that moment, as the city hummed with life below her, Marissa made a silent vow. No matter how high the stakes, no matter how formidable the adversaries, she would not be intimidated, corrupted, or silenced. She would fight, adapt, and thrive, and in doing so, create a legacy that extended far beyond the walls of Vaughn Dynamics. Months had passed since Marissa Lane had faced the corporate storm that had threatened to end her career before it truly began. Each day at Vaughn Dynamics was a new test of skill, resilience, and strategy. Yet she had proven herself time and again, earning respect, forging alliances, and reshaping the way the company approached both business and ethics. Every decision she made carried the weight of consequence, but Marissa now wielded that responsibility like a master craftsman. The culmination of her efforts arrived in a way she had not fully anticipated. Raymond Vaughn, the stoic billionaire who had first noticed her kindness toward his son, summoned her to his office one crisp autumn morning. The city skyline gleamed behind him, sunlight reflecting off the glass towers like golden shards of promise. "Marissa," he said, voice calm but firm, "the board has requested a formal presentation on the long-term restructuring strategy you proposed. This is your moment to define the future of Vaughn Dynamics." Marissa's heart raced, but she remained composed. She had spent weeks perfecting every detail, anticipating every objection, and mapping every potential outcome. Her presentation was not just numbers and charts. It was a vision, a blueprint for ethical growth, sustainable practices, and community impact. She understood that true leadership required more than intelligence. It required integrity, empathy, and the courage to stand by one's convictions. The boardroom was silent as Marissa began. Executives who had once questioned her presence now watched with a mixture of curiosity and begrudging respect. She spoke with clarity, authority, and passion, weaving together financial insight, human impact, and strategic foresight. She outlined initiatives to retain talent, improve employee morale, and invest in minority-owned businesses and community programs. Each point was grounded in meticulous research, yet delivered with an authenticity that no spreadsheet could quantify. As she concluded, there was a pause, a rare, heavy silence that seemed to hang in the air. Then one by one, heads began to nod. Raymond's sharp gray eyes softened, a subtle acknowledgement of her triumph. The CEO, known for his exacting standards and unyielding expectations, finally allowed the faintest hint of a smile. "Well done, Marissa," he said simply. The board erupted in discussion, not with dissent but with genuine consideration. Marissa had not only defended her strategy, she had transformed skepticism into belief. In that moment, she realized the depth of her influence. She had stepped into a world designed to test her at every turn, and she had reshaped it from within. Even as professional success solidified, Marissa never forgot the roots of her journey. Ethan's laughter, his trust, and the bond they had formed that rainy night remained her guiding light. She visited him regularly, mentoring, supporting, and celebrating his achievements. Watching him grow from a timid, uncertain child into a confident young man reminded her why she had accepted Raymond's offer in the first place. Kindness had opened a door, and responsibility had given her the tools to create real change. The culmination of this personal investment arrived at Ethan's high school graduation. Marissa stood beside Raymond in the crowded auditorium, the weight of years of hard work and perseverance reflected in the proud smiles they shared. Ethan rolled his wheelchair forward, diploma clutched tightly in his hands, eyes sparkling with unfiltered joy. "I told you I'd make it," he said, beaming up at Marissa. Marissa knelt beside him, ruffling his hair. "I never doubted it for a second," she replied, her voice thick with emotion. Raymond watched silently, the usual rigidity of his demeanor softened by the scene before him. "You did well, Carter," he said, a rare note of personal acknowledgement. The applause echoed through the auditorium, but Marissa knew that the real victory was not in the accolades, the titles, or the corporate successes. It was in the lives she had touched, the systems she had changed, and the legacy she was beginning to build. Years passed, and Marissa's influence at Vaughn Dynamics only grew. Her name became synonymous with integrity, strategic brilliance, and ethical leadership. Programs she initiated flourished: mentorship networks for underrepresented youth, partnerships with minority-owned businesses, and corporate social responsibility initiatives that reshaped the company's public image. Vaughn Dynamics had evolved from a profit-driven empire into a model for sustainable and ethical business practices, thanks, in no small part, to Marissa's unwavering principles and leadership. She also continued to mentor Ethan, now a college freshman, guiding him not just academically, but in life lessons rooted in empathy, courage, and resilience. Their bond remained unshakable, a testament to the power of a single act of kindness, multiplied through years of trust and dedication. One autumn afternoon, Marissa stood in the newly inaugurated Carter Vaughn Community Center, named in honor of both her contributions and the Vaughn family's legacy. Children laughed and played, mentors guided, and the spirit of opportunity thrived in a space that had once been just another empty lot in the city. Marissa surveyed the scene, a quiet satisfaction settling in her chest. She had come a long way from the diner, the double shifts, the late nights of exhaustion. And yet in many ways, she felt as grounded as she had ever been, tethered not by wealth or title, but by the lives she had impacted. Raymond approached quietly, standing beside her as they watched the young students explore the center. "You've done more than I ever imagined," he said, his tone rare in its warmth. Marissa smiled, eyes scanning the bustling room. "I just did what needed to be done," she replied, humility and pride intertwined. "Kindness started it, opportunity shaped it, but people like these kids, they're what make it real." For a moment, they stood in silence, watching the future unfold. Marissa understood now that success was not measured by titles or money, but by the difference one could make in the lives of others. Her journey, from diner to boardroom, from kindness to influence, had culminated not just in personal triumph, but in a legacy that would endure far beyond her own career.